Good afternoon, participants. Welcome back for the afternoon session for your day 3 of Atal FTP. Here we have the next session handled by Dr. T. Mohansundaram sir. I take immense pleasure in introducing him formally to you. Dr. T. Mohansundaram has completed his doctoral degree in management from Ada University and his Master of Business Administration from Badiyar University. He has 16 years of total experience in industry and academics. He has published 20 research articles in reputed journals, which are indexed in SSCI, ABDC, Scopus, and UGC. He has presented many papers in international conferences organized by eminent institutions like IIT, IIMs, IISCs. He is actively involved in research and consultancy works. He has closely worked with State Planning Commission, Tamil Nadu, in preparing District Human Resource Development Report for Erode and Tripur districts. He has undertaken industry consultancy projects from SKM Egg Exports Limited, Ascent E-Digits Solutions, and CMV Global Clothing. He has received grants and financial assistance from various agencies like AIMS, NHRC, etc. for research projects and for organizing programs. His favorite subjects for teaching are international finance, financial management, banking management, financial and management accounting, security analysis and portfolio management, and business research methodology. He is a certified financial education resource person of Securities and Exchange Board of India. In 2018, he has received the national level Young Business Young Teacher Award 2018 from Association of Indian Management Schools. We welcome you, sir, and over to you.
Thank you, madam. So, good afternoon to all the participants.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, very good afternoon. So, today the topic given to me is a multivariate gauge. Okay. So, I'll be covering both Arch family models and then. So predominantly today we are going to concentrate on Arch and Gauge models, which are a univariate model. Maybe that will take around 1 hour. Then we will get into an introduction of a multivariate gauge. Okay, so this is the plan for the session. I hope you all already had gone through some sessions on Arch also, correct?
Yes,
is
sir.
It? Okay, fine, great. Okay. Yes. So, however, today I would like to give my perspective on simple Arch and Gauge model. Then I'll get into a multivariate gauge, because the one constraint what I faced here is like we are doing all these program on GPUs, and if you see in multivariate gauge, a lot of models like a dynamic conditional correlations, etc., which can be used effectively using other softwares like Microfit or RATS. There is a software called RATS, and you also have something called as a, you also have RStudio. Okay, so those softwares have a lot of potential where you can get into advanced multivariate gauges. In eViews, we have certain limitations. Okay, so we have to live with that limitations. But however, I will introduce you the concept of multivariate gauge, and maybe 1 or 2 multivariate gauge we will try to solve it. Okay, so this is the plan for this particular session. So with this introduction, let us get into Arch family models quickly. Yeah. So this is all about Arch and Gauge session. Okay.
The PPT is not visible, sir.
Not visible, sir?
Correct, sir.
The screen is not visible.
1 minute, I'll check it. Okay.
Yeah.
I
now
hope
it is
now you're
visible.
okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Great.
Yes, we can see now.
So somebody has put on your mic. I request the participants to switch off your mic, please. Please mute your mic.
Sir, you can mute them, sir.
Mr. Sivaprasad, please mute your mic.
Satya ma'am. Satya ma'am.
Just a minute, sir. I'm muting them, sir. 1 minute.
Okay, okay, sure.
Done, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you, ma'am. So this arts and gods session, we all know generally whenever we have a heteroscedasity in error terms, okay, then we are supposed to go to arts and gods model. So the main purpose of getting into arts and gods model is, first, in case of an univariate arts and gods model, the main purpose is to estimate the volatility. Okay. So far, when you look into the ordinary least square regression analysis, our main objective will be to estimate the returns. But however, the returns alone may not be sufficient for investors. Actually, they will be giving due consideration for a variance, that is a volatility also. Because as an investor, if I decide to make my investment on particular financial asset, what I will look both return and also the volatility. Okay, so in that aspect, the volatility plays an important role. Because if you see the normal ordinary least square method, the focus is entirely only on the return, whereas the volatility concept has been missed out. So that is the reason actually we are getting into volatility. And one of the assumptions of an ordinary least square is the variance is constant. Okay, that is one assumption of an OLS. But if you look into the most of the financial time series data, this variance may not be a constant. Okay, rather we will be having a varying variance. So how to address in such a situation? We have to move to arch model, because arch model will accommodate the varying variance and it will try to give a most efficient result given the particular condition. Okay. So with this, let us get into volatility. But again, why volatility is so important? Why we want to give so much emphasis on all these models? Okay, that may be a question you may be having. So the first important reason is we all know the volatility. Obviously, it gives a risk. Okay, volatility means there is a risk. The asset prices will move up and down drastically. As a result, there is every possibility the investor may lose some money out of it. So that is one thing. Okay, so we need to understand the volatility also. That is important. The second one, volatility proves to be the base for asset pricing models. Okay, today if you invest in any financial assets or even in a derivatives, okay, how the pricing of an asset is flexible to reach. Okay, it is not just because based on the return alone, rather it also based on the volatility. Then volatility is mainly used in the portfolio performance evaluation, because you know what is a portfolio. It is an array of assets in which you are spreading your money or investment. Okay, so with the expectation of getting an optimum return. Okay, that is the main purpose of a portfolio. So comparing the portfolios and which portfolio, whether the portfolio A or portfolio B, which gives the better result. Okay, to evaluate which is the best portfolio. Obviously, the volatility needs to be given due consideration. Then, volatility again. Again, it is useful for comparing the performance of mutual fund schemes also. Okay, because there also, if you see, if you invest some say 5,000 rupees in a particular mutual fund, there is every possibility it may add value to it. Either it may move to 6,000 or 7,000 again, or it may come down to 4,000 or 3,000. So it is important to make, before parking our money in a different mutual fund schemes, we have to compare the performance of the mutual fund schemes and whether the performance is consistent or not. That is also an important question. Okay, so in that aspect also the volatility plays an important role. And finally, used for the valuation of a derivative products. Okay, today we have a number of derivative products, interest rate derivatives, so many things are there, but again, the valuation of the derivative products largely depends on the volatility also. So these are the few points which I want to emphasize before getting into the application part to make you understand why this volatility is so important. Yeah, getting into the traditional method of measuring a volatility, we know I am not going getting in too much depth into all these things because our focus is main on the application part. Okay, so just I will give you a brief introduction. Say, after understanding the importance of volatility, the people tried to accommodate the volatility also, or in other words, to measure the volatility. Okay, one of the simplest and the most traditional method of measuring on volatility is obviously through variance. Okay, the standard deviation and variance. But what happens is, like, as I told you, those traditional methods are good. In the variance is constant over a period of time. Okay, most of our financial data, this variance may not be a constant. As a result, these traditional methods suffer certain drawbacks. Okay. So to measure because if you compute a variance, say for example, you know how to compute the variance, the formula is given. Okay, so it is simply observation minus the mean, okay, the whole square, because divided by n minus 1. Okay, in this variation just I put 1 by n, but another common formula which will be used is x minus x bar the whole square divided by n minus 1. Okay, so the summation of all these things. Okay, so that is one of the traditional method of measuring the variance. Say for example, you want to measure the variance of Nifty 50 index. Okay, so you have around 200 observations. Let us assume it's a daily data. Okay, and for the entire 200 observation, if you try to measure the variance using a traditional method, measuring the volatility using the traditional way of variance, then obviously you will get only one value for it. Okay, say the value, it may be one absolute value. You will be having only one absolute value. But the important question is whether that one single absolute value is adequate to explain the history behind the variations in the prices over the period of 200 days. That is the most important question. Okay, so obviously the answer is no. The one single value may not able to explain the history which are behind the variations of the prices, stock prices. So because of this reason, the very traditional method of measuring the variance is not at all adequate. Okay. So what time varying variance? Because we know that the variances are varying over a period of time. So we need to move to time varying variance. Okay. So again, to address this time varying variance or to accommodate this time varying variance, our researchers have come up with one model, simple model you all know. Obviously, that is a moving average variance. And moving average variance, you know, if at all we have 200 observations, let us assume it's a 7-day moving average. Okay, what we'll do, the first 7 days, the prices, index Nifty indexes will be averaged, and that answer, whatever the moving average what you are getting, that will be accommodated in the next column. Say, if you don't mind, I will just open. No, I can't open the Excel right now. Okay, so that will be the 7th value. Okay, like that. What next time what we will do? We will ignore the first one, and from 2nd to 8th, for that we will try to find the variance. Similarly, again we'll move to 3rd to 9th. Like that, we will be getting each and every. We will be getting the variance values for every 7 observations. Okay, so at the end of for 200 observations, say if it is a 7-day moving average, obviously you will end up with 194 moving average values, because first 6 won't have any value. First 6 columns we will leave it blank because it's a 7-day moving average, right? So you will be having around 194 moving average values. So one of the drawback of the traditional method, simple variance, has been overcome, because in simple variance we had only one value which assumed it's a constant. But however, here now we have 194 different moving averages, which is much better, okay, in explaining the conditional variance which is available in the data series. Okay, but however, one of the problem in the moving average is, say for example, I as a researcher used the past you also downloading the same data. Okay, but however, for computing the moving average, I am using a 7 days moving average, but you are using a 14 days or some other. Okay, the window size is different. In that case, what will happen is, even though we are working on the same data, okay, because we set a different window size. I set a window size of 7, you set a window size of say 14 or 21. Because of which we will be getting a different result. That is one thing. Okay, and another, that is one drawback of moving average variance. Another important drawback of a moving average variance is it gives an equal weightage for all the 7 data. Say for example, 7 days price. I am using a 7-day moving average. Okay, it gives an equal weightage for all the 7 days moving average. Okay, say that means for today I will be considering the previous 7 days. Okay, so yesterday's value also will be having the same weightage. 5 days back before value also will be given the same weightage. This is practically not acceptable, because we know that yesterday's price or volatility will have a high impact on today's volatility. Okay, so the yesterday's movement are should be given more weightage, but unfortunately the simple moving average method doesn't give that also. So these are the two important drawbacks of the simple moving average. Even though we are able to capture a dynamism in, of variance, that is we are getting 194 observations, but the problem is that there won't be any consistent result, okay, because of the window size, because of different window size. Another one is like another one is like weightage is not given. Okay, the weightage is not given. So these are the two important drawbacks. Understanding this drawback later, little more advanced model called as a weighted moving average has come, which addresses the weightage problem. That means the latest data has been given more weightage, but the oldest data has, in the sense the oldest data has been given lesser weightage, which looks appropriate and seems like that the problem of weightage has been solved. But however, the different window size, that is a problem. Okay, so because of which again the inconsistencies provide. So all these things leads to what we are going to discuss today is called as an arch model. Okay, so these are the drawbacks of the traditional methods, okay, methods of measuring the volatility, because of which we are moving to arch model. So that is an introduction for an arch model, and this arch model has been developed by an economist called as Robert Engel, a very popular and also the Nobel Prize winner for coming out with co-integration analysis and also the Granger causality analysis. Okay, so for that purpose, actually, he is one of the well-known econometrician. So he introduced the model called as an arch. Okay, in fact, I don't have that slide right now, but actually he himself has addressed so many people. He thanked so many people. How he come to identify the arch effect. Okay, it's actually very interesting if you read it also. Okay, so just like that, how he can able to identify to find out the method to address this varying volatility. Okay, however, let us get into that. So he introduced this arch model in 1982. This model both mean and variance simultaneously. So this is one of the unique feature of an arch model. OLS regression, it models only the returns. Okay, that is the mean is getting addressed. But however, the variance has been omitted there. So here in arch method, both the mean equation and variance, okay, the both are considered, okay, simultaneously. So he come out with the arch model, and for the first time in 1982, and that arch model has been reported in a particular article, okay, called as an autoregressive conditional heteroscedasticity with estimates of variance of the United Kingdom inflation. Okay, so he actually tried to study the inflation effect. Okay, at that time he found that the varying variance, okay, how to address it. Of course, he has taken help from the other econometricians also, because of which he was able to finally come out and arrive at better model, okay, called as an arch model. And this article has been published in Econometrica journal. Okay, so this is all about the arch introduction. Let me get into the little advanced. Why we want to move to arch? As I told, three reasons. One is volatility clustering. Volatility clustering, in simple sentence, the big shocks will follow the big shocks and small shocks follows the small shocks. Okay. So that means it is an indication there is some kind of an autocorrelation is happening within the in the variance. Okay, some kind of an autocorrelation is happening in the variance. Okay, please remember we will be having a two equations. One is a mean equation and other one is a variance equation. Say for example, in simple words, the mean equation is nothing but say RT. RT is the actual return. Let us assume RT is equal to alpha plus beta. Okay, alpha plus beta. Say yt minus 1. Okay, yt minus 1. Or in other words, say yt is equal to alpha plus beta yt minus 1. So in that case, what we won't stop with that, right? In econometrics, we will add one more term called as an error term. Yt minus 1 plus error term. Okay, so in mean equation error term, what we assume is that error term is an white noise process. In other words, it's a stochastic process. That means values which is purely because of random changes. Okay, it doesn't have any kind of a correlation with its own past lags. Okay, every day's error term is considered to be an independent. Okay, it doesn't have any kind of a connectivity with the earlier lags of the error terms. Okay, so this is the assumption what we will have in the mean equation. Okay, but in variance equation also you will be having one error term. Okay, so but however in the variance equation error term we assume that error term, because in variance equation we won't simply include the error term. If I will be showing you the formula for arch in the next slide, there you can observe that we will always square the error terms. Okay, so in arch model, in mean equation we won't square the error term. That error term in mean equation, whatever the error term we have is assumed to be an independent one. That is an it is a stochastic process. It's a pure white noise process. But however, in arch, we will always square the error terms, and that error terms definitely after squaring it will become an autocorrelation. It will exhibit an autocorrelation properties. Okay, that autocorrelation in fact helps to measure the variance. Okay, because conditional variance means what? Varying variance. Because whenever the variance is varying, obviously there is a kind of an autocorrelation impact which are available in the error term. Okay, that is the meaning of it. So most of the financial time series data will exhibit this volatility clustering. Okay, so because of that, actually we cannot go for an OLS mode because we know clearly the variance is not constant. So one of the important assumption of OLS is the variance mean should be constant, variance also should be constant, and that should not be any autocorrelation. Okay, so if all these properties has been fulfilled, then only we call that as an white noise process. If error has constant mean, if the error has constant variance, and if the error doesn't have any autocorrelation issue, then we will call that error term as an white noise process. Okay, so this is an assumption of an OLS. But unfortunately, in financial data series, you cannot expect these properties. As a result, you cannot run an OLS. You have to move to a maximum likelihood method. That is what Arch has been built under this particular method. So we won't use OLS, rather we will be using our momentum method. So this is the first property, and the next one is the leverage effect. Okay, so this is also very evident. The sense, say, if leverage effect means, say, our stock market will react to a lot of news. Just I'm using the example as a stock market. Okay, say you and consider our area of interest is in a stock market. Okay, so in that case, the stock market reacts to various news. Okay, or various information, and some information may be positive, some information may be a negative. Okay, so the important understanding is whether our stock market is reacting equally to both the positive and negative, both to the positive and negative. Okay, this is an interesting question because mostly any dependent variable, okay, particularly a financial dependent variable, the response of that particular financial dependent variable will be very high to bad news compared to good news. This has been proven over a period of time. Okay, most of the time this may happen. Okay, I'm not saying every time it will happen, most of the time, say for example, the stock markets will react or respond more to the negative news rather than the positive news. Okay. If our stock market exhibits such a characteristic, then we will say that there is a leverage effect. Okay, the leverage is nothing but asymmetry. Why I am saying this is an asymmetry? Say for example, if our stock market reacts equally to both good news and bad news, then we will say our stock market is a symmetrical. Okay, the response is symmetry. Symmetry means both the side equal. Okay, so you just imagine the normal distribution curve. Okay, so if it is a normal distribution, if you divide it to both the sides will look alike, right? So that is an asymmetry. But most of the time, that is a symmetry. But most of the time, what will happen? The markets will react more to the bad news, because of which the leverage effect will be there. So the finding out whether there is a leverage impact, okay, in our stock market is also one of the interesting area of research, and a lot of researches has also happened in this area. So our financial data may exhibit this. Okay, the volatility may be very high in falling market compared to rising market. Okay, that means why the volatility is more? Because the market is reacting more to the negative news. So that's why volatility is very high in the falling market. Okay, so that is the second property. Third one is a leptocriticis. Leptocriticis means most of the financial series data, when you plot it, okay, what will happen? Say for example, you have 200 observations. Out of the 200 observations, around 120 or 130 observations will be closely located, okay, and it will be in the center point. Okay, so because of which what will happen, since more observation are clustering very closely, if you draw a normal distribution, what will happen? Actually, the distribution won't be a normal at all. Rather, it will have an excessive peakedness. Why it will have an excessive peakedness? Say, for example, 1% variation out of 200 days. Say 120 days may have 1% variation. Say 3% variation. Only say 30 to 40 days may have a 3% variation. 5% variation, very few. Only 5 or 10 days may have. Okay, so most of the day out of the 200 days, it will be the stock prices may be moving within that 1% rate, percentage movement, because of which your distribution will look very peaked one. Okay, it will be very peaked one, as it is mentioned here in the blue one. Okay, the black one is actually a normal distribution, which we call it as a metrocritic. Okay. However, in financial time series, why this peakedness is coming? Because more observations are clustered here and very few observations are on both the sides. Okay, so because of which this excess peakedness is there, we call this as a leptocritic. And this leptocritic also will have another feature. The one feature is an excess peakedness. The second important feature is it will have a flat tail, because your curve is so peaked. As a result, most part of the thing what will happen, you will be having a flat tail. Okay, so this is also one of the common characteristics. Say whenever you draw a diagram, see in GViews what you will do first, whenever you get an observation, you will plot it. Okay, when you plot it, what you will observe, okay, you will be observing how the observations are placed. Okay, if you see that most of the observations are placed in the middle, and that means this is an ideal case of a leverage effect, or kind of a varying volatility will be there because of this excess peakedness. Okay, the second one is that is a leptocritic. Then that is all about the leptocritic. Third one. Fourth one, non-trading period effects. Because what do you mean by the non-trading period effects? Say for example, our stock market functions from Monday to Friday. Okay, and so every day market opens in the morning and closes at the evening. So any new information comes between this period will get reflected in the next day's opening price. Okay, but however, if you see when the market closes at Friday, it again opens only on Monday morning. Okay, that means there is a lot of time. It is a lot of informations are expected Okay, so because say for example, if the market is closing on Monday evening and opening on Tuesday, you have a limited time, and whatever the information what we received is getting exhibited or getting reflected in the next day's opening price. Okay, but if you see the difference between the time period between the weekdays and weekend is different. Weekends have a lot of off period. Okay, so more number of informations are coming. Just because more number of informations are coming, you cannot expect the volatility of the market on one day will be much higher compared to the weekdays. Okay, compared to weekdays. Of course, there are certain studies like week, say Monday effect, January effect. All those studies are there. But what I am trying to say here is, say for example, the difference between Monday evening and Tuesday morning. Okay, if the variance is 1% for one day, and you cannot expect the variances, say from Friday evening to Monday morning, cannot be exactly 3% because it's of 3 days. Okay, it is not necessary it will be exactly increasing in the same manner. Okay, so that is called as a non-trading period effects. Okay, so all these things sometimes also called as a styled facts. If you Google it and see styled facts, what is the styled facts? Because the market will react in certain ways for which there is no proper theory to support it. Okay, there is no proper theory to support it. That's why so many models are an a theoretical model. Okay, a theoretical model. That means it doesn't have a theoretical background. Okay, that is the meaning of it. However, let me get into, I hope you all understood these characteristics. Just I want you to concentrate on these graphs, okay, regarding an volatility, varying volatility, volatility clustering, and the leverage effect. Please concentrate here. So if you concentrate here, you know that there are some periods which are high volatility, big shocks followed by big shocks. What it means? It means a varying volatility. Volatility is clustering. Volatility clustering is happening. Okay, varying volatility means some like this, some days are here. Okay, what is the leverage effect? Leverage effect also is visible, evident here. In this, I don't see any leverage effect much. But however, if you see the Jaiprakash Associates Limited stock prices, say here on this, actually the positive is very small, but the negative is very big. Okay. Similarly, whenever if you divide this into two, okay, exactly if you draw a straight line here, you see a lot of big lines are in the falling market. Okay, so it isn't clear evidence there is a leverage effect which is reflected in the Jaiprakash Associates, because if you divide the line here in the Nifty here, you cannot clearly say there is an existence of leverage effect, because more or less both look same. Okay, upward movement also is having an equal magnitude like a falling market movement. But however, here if you see the falling market movements are much bigger. Okay, there are so many big spikes in the falling market compared to the rising market. So because of which we can clearly say there is also a presence of a leverage effect. Okay, so whenever if you get a data like this, it is clear that you also want to capture the leverage effect. Okay, either go for a T-GARS or G-GARS or something like that to capture, which can able to capture the leverage effect. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just moving up little quickly. Here, how to model it? Okay, how to model the varying variance? Okay, so this is an arch variance equation. If you see here, arch variance equation, that is an expectation of ut square. I told you, no, the error terms will be squared in variance equation. Okay, so this is the variance, squared variance. Whenever the subset T is there, what it means? It is a conditional variance. Okay, that means what? Today's variance is conditioned upon yesterday's variance if it is a daily price. Okay, so in case of an unconditional variance, you will have only this, say for example, sigma square. Okay, this is sigma square. You won't have a subset T. So whenever you come across the sigma square in any economics book, it is a clear evidence that the variance is an unconditional. That means the variance is constant. But however, to represent the varying variance, the subset T will be used. So whenever the subset T is used, please remember It is a conditional variance. In Arch model, we are going to estimate only the conditional variance. Okay, because the variance depends upon previous days or previous periods variance. Okay, or a previous periods information. Okay, that's why it is called as a conditional variance. Okay, with this introduction, I think I can get into some practical implications. I'm not going to get too much into this. This is the written equation. This is an variance equation. Written equation, as I told you, this is an actual return, depends upon the mean return. MT stands for mean return plus error term. Okay, so this is considered to be a pure white noise. But however, in ut minus 1 square in variance equation, the squared errors are not a white noise process. Rather, it is having an autocorrelation effect. Okay, so the conditional variance, if you see here, C sigma square T, that is a conditional variance, depends upon the past error terms. Here I have used, say, up to P terms. Okay, how many days prior errors or prior information needs to be considered for doing an Arch model. Okay, so these things, how many is an optimum lag? These things will be determined by Arch model itself. Okay, you need to really bother about how many lags. In case of an co-integration, if you see, you have to choose the optimum lag length, all those things. But however, here in Arch model, the Arch model will determine, okay, how many lags should be considered to estimate the conditional variance. So this is the null hypothesis of the Arch model. What it is? It is an alpha 1, alpha 2 up to alpha p. Okay, all the parameters are 0. What it means? There is no Arch effect. Okay, if it is equal to 0 means there is no Arch effect. Okay, what is the alternative hypothesis? Any one parameter. Say here alpha naught is the constant. Okay, alpha 1. Okay, this is a parameter related to yesterday's information because t minus 1, right? T minus 1 means yesterday. T minus 2 means day before yesterday. Okay, so if all the parameters of the error terms, yesterday's error terms, day before yesterday's error terms are 0, okay, that means there is no Arch effect. But however, if any one of that, it is not necessary all alpha 1 not equal to 0, alpha 2 not equal to 0, that is not necessary. Okay, if you put that, it means all should be not equal to 0. But actually, some may be 0, maybe only one may not be equal to 0. Say only alpha, say here, alpha 1 alone is not 0. Whereas all the other parameters are 0. That means also there is an Arch effect. Because alpha 1 is not equal to 0 means to some extent this alpha 1, that is nothing but here t minus 1, that is yesterday's information, is contributing to the conditional volatility. So this means there is an Arch effect is present here. Okay, so this is how actually the theoretical concept behind the Arch model. Okay, so let me quickly get into the Arch model. So very quickly I will do it because let us concentrate on multivariate curves also. So here data okay, not a problem. Say I have shared that data file to you. I request everyone to simultaneously open that. It's a simple data because I don't want to complicate the things. It's a very simple data. I'm going to use it. So far, any doubt? Shall I proceed?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, no doubt.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. So here I'm not going to check the stationarity and all those things because I know that see this Nifty is nothing but it is a Nifty returns. Okay, it is a Nifty returns. So there are few positives and few minus. Then that means automatically the mean reversion process is happening. As a result, there will be a constant all the mean, all those things. Okay. One of the precondition of an arch model is your data series needs to be a stationary. Okay. And I know that both FIA and Nifty returns both are stationary in this case. Okay. As a result, I am not going to do a stationarity test. With that assumption, I am going to work out. Okay. If you check also, you will find both are stationary only. So what I am doing is I want to do arch, but before arch, whenever you find both the data are stationary, okay, then immediately what you have to do? Immediately you have to run only an OLS. Okay, immediately you have to run only OLS. OLS means ordinary least square regression. Okay, that only you have to run. So there are multiple ways through which you can open the data. What I am doing is first I am considering Nifty as a dependent variable. So I am choosing this first and then I am selecting the FIA. Okay, so you can right click, open as equation. Otherwise you can go to view and you can also come to estimate equation. Okay, but however this is a time saving mode. So I always open like this. If you see, it says a least square. Okay, this is the equation. This is actually a mean equation. Okay, this is the mean equation because OLS will have only the mean equation. So if I estimate it, I am finding yes, FIA is an independent variable because the first one what I choose is a Nifty. It is significant. Okay, but however the model suffers from an adequacy problem because R square, adjusted R square, all those things are so very less. That means FIA is not at all sufficient to explain the variation in the Nifty. Nifty's variation actually depends upon so many other things. Okay, that is the meaning of it. So whenever you have such a low R square, obviously this is not a good model at all. Okay, this is not a good model because the variation, because whenever we run a regression OLS, what we are trying to say? We are trying to say to what extent the independent variable is having the capability to explain the variation in the Nifty. Okay, so if you see here, this is very minimal. As a result, this suffers from the model adequacy problem. Okay, this is just for your example. So, but once you find a significant and if you have a decent R square, and you will be happy. Okay, but what you have to do, you have to see whether the assumptions of OLS has been met or not. Okay, three things you have to check. One is a normality, one is an autocorrelation, and the other one is a heteroscedasticity. Okay, since we are focusing on arch model, I am going to do only a heteroscedasticity. Okay, I'm going to do only a heteroscedasticity. I'm pretty confident autocorrelation will be also there. Okay, because in time series we know, particularly with the stock market, definitely this model means the error terms will also have an autocorrelation. But however, our interest is to check. So what I'm doing, I am going to again. I will do slowly. Okay, I will go to view. Okay, I will go to residual diagnostics. I will choose heteroscedasticity, and then I will choose arch. Okay. So let me leave this number of lags as such one itself. Okay, not a problem. Okay, so what is the null hypothesis of this test? There is null hypothesis is no arch. Okay, no arch is the null hypothesis, but unfortunately that has been rejected. Null hypothesis is no arch effect. That means no heteroscedasticity. That is the null hypothesis, but that has been rejected. That means our model suffers from heteroscedasticity issue. In this case, whatever the OLS estimation what we had done here, okay, this is not valid. Even though the variable is significant, all those things are fine, this model is not a valid model. This is maybe a spurious or something. Okay, it is not a correct model at all. So whenever you find arch effect in the residual, you have to move to so whenever you find an arch effect in the residual, you have to move to arch-Gauss models. Okay, so now what I am going to do is I am going to move to arch model. So from this, are you able to follow me? Am I going
Yes,
faster?
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
No,
fine.
sir.
Yes, sir.
No, it's
Yes,
fine.
Okay, perfect.
Sir,
Okay.
can you do again the estimation?
What? I couldn't get you.
Sir, can you do once again the estimation? How to do estimation?
Okay, fine. Quickly, I'll do it.
Okay,
see, these are the two variables I have. Okay, one is Nifty. I considering Nifty as a dependent variable because I want to see whether the foreign institutional investments are affecting our stock market or not. Okay, so because of this, I am keeping FIA as an independent variable. Okay, so whatever the dependent variable, I will choose first, then the independent variable, and then I will right click the mouse, and then you will get this open as equation. Okay, and simply you have to say okay. Okay, you got the estimation, and from this estimation we have to check whether the model has an arch effect or not in the residual, which we have done. Okay, I'm not going to do that again. Or if you go here, view residual, go to heteroscedasticity test. Okay, under residual diagnostics, you will find whether the arch effect is present or not. We just now we saw there is an arch effect. Okay, which means we cannot use this OLS model. Okay, we cannot use this OLS model. So what we have to do, we have to go for an arch model. So what I'm doing, I'm clicking on estimate. Okay, here method, I'm changing from least square. Okay, from ordinary least square or least square method, I am changing this to arch. Okay, I am changing this to arch. Once I change to arch, you can see this pop-up window. It has two divisions now. Earlier it had only one blank space. Okay, one is only for mean, but here you have two different equations. One is a mean equation and other one is a variance equation. So in this mean equation, if you see, okay, so what is the dependent variable? Actually, our dependent variable is, I have wrongly chosen here. So as per our interest, Nifty is the dependent variable. Okay, and C you can put it either now or later also. FIA. Okay, FIA is the independent variable. Along with this, say for example, I also want to see whether yesterday's Nifty price. Okay, yesterday's Nifty price also having a significant impact on Nifty or not. So I am including one more term called as Nifty open the bracket -1, or simply you can put AR open the bracket -1. AR means autoregressive, because our dependent variable is Nifty. If you put AR -1 means yesterday's Nifty. Okay, that is the mean. So either you can put Nifty C FIA Nifty -1 or Nifty C FIA AR -1. Anything is fine. Okay, so now my objective now is to check to estimate the arch model. Okay, so as a result, what I will do, I will make this arch field as 0. Okay, so and then I am not going to do anything because the distribution, let it be a normal. Either you can keep it as a normal or student distribution, but I would prefer normal. Okay, you can keep it as a normal Gaussian distribution itself. You no need to do anything, just you say okay. Okay, just you say okay. You got the arch model. Okay, so what is the arch model says? Here in arch model, we are not going to give due importance to mean equation. Okay, rather we will be concentrating more on variance equation. So what it says, see, recede -1 the whole square. Okay, as I told you, in variance equation, yesterday's errors are squared. Okay, that's why the squared. Recede 1, recede is nothing but residual, the other name of the error term. Okay, yesterday's error, squared error. Okay, whether is it a significant? Yes, it is a significant, because probability value is less than 0.05. Okay, so that means it is significantly differ from the null hypothesis. Okay, so null hypothesis is no arch effect, but here yes. Okay, here in the arch model, actually what is the null hypothesis? Alpha 1 is equal to 0, alpha 2 equal to 0, etc. We saw, right? But here what it says, that has been rejected. That means yesterday's error term. Say for example, what is the? I'll go to that presentation also to make you more understandable. So what? Because I want to show you what actually we are doing. Okay. So if you go here, this is the variance equation. Okay, this is the variance equation. What we have done, okay, what we have done here is only one error term is considered. Okay, only one error term is considered. That means in this equation, we don't have all these things. Okay, we have only this thing. From here to here only we have, and it is significant. Okay, this yesterday's error term t-1, yesterday's error term is significant. That's what we saw here. Okay, it is significant. This means this alpha 1 is significant. Okay, in bringing volatility, because this is a conditional volatility, right? So yesterday's news is contributing to the volatility of the stock market. Okay, this is what we are finding in Arch model. Okay, this is what we are finding in an Arch model. So that means the variance depends upon its own post lag. That's why it is called as a conditional variance. Okay, so and yesterday's data is contributing to this. When you will have this kind of information, only if at all you have an volatility clustering or varying volatility. Okay, only in that case you will find all these things significant. Okay, so that is what we estimated here. This is an Arch model. This is an Arch 1,0 model. Okay, it's generally, my suggestion is you can even directly get into Garch. Okay, but however, just in case if you go for an Arch 1,0, what you have to do, you have to look for archaic information criteria and note down this value. Then you can go for Arch 2,0, 3,0, etc. And then if all these models are having significance, then among the model, whichever is having a low archaic information criterion value, that model actually is giving a more efficient result. Okay, that is the meaning of it. So I am not going much into Arch model. Let me get into Garch model. Okay, this is I have told the basics. Okay, I have told the basics of it. And one more thing, in Arch Garch, you really no need to bother about R square, etc. Because R square is valid only in case of a least squared method. Okay, OLS, when you run an OLS or least square method, only there you have to bother about Arch square on those things. But if you see here, Arch is built on maximum likelihood, ML Arch, okay, maximum likelihood. So here you really no need to bother much about R squared, adjusted R squared, etc. Okay, so now what I'm doing, I want to go to Garch model. Okay, that before getting into it, I'll just show you the Garch model equation alone, because I don't want to explain too much of Garch model theories. I will just show the equation alone of Garch model. And this Garch model is actually built by an economist called as Boler-Slave. Okay, he published his research of identifying a Garch in the journal called a Journal of Econometrics. Okay, and actually he is a scholar of Robert Angle. Okay, who found an Arch model. Okay, so he's in PhD. He completed his PhD under him. As a result, he also has taken up the research in continuation with the Arch model. As a result, he found an improved model called as an Garch model. Okay, why we want to go for a Garch model? That may be an important question in your mind. But however, there are a lot of problems in Arch model. Okay, one key important problem in Arch model is sometimes it will have too much of estimators. Estimators means independent variables. Say for example, in this model we had only one independent lag. Okay, yesterday's price alone. But what happens? It may have more number of independent variables. Sometimes, say the lag length may go to 7, 8, etc. In that case, what will happen whenever you run a conditional variance, it will become so much complexity. The reason is we need to see the speed of adjustments. So many factors are there actually. And one important thing is whenever you have a more independent variable, the model's efficiency is getting affected. Okay, because your degrees of freedom is getting affected. 1 minute, friends. Okay, yeah, your degrees of freedom may get affected, because what is the degrees of freedom? It depends upon number of independent variables and the number of observations basically. So whenever you have more number of independent variables, it requires lot more number of observations. But with a given observation, say for example you have only 10 yearly data, okay, and you want to run an Arch model, and the Arch model says say 5 or 6 lakhs needs to be considered. In that case, your degrees of freedom will come to, say for example, in case of physics, your degrees of freedom will come to 3. Because how you will find out the degrees of freedom? Degrees of freedom is nothing but number of observations minus number of independent variables minus 1. Okay, that is how you will find the degrees of freedom. So you will get a lesser degrees of freedom. Lesser degrees of freedom means the strength of the model is getting sacrificed. Okay, that is the meaning of it. So because of which, what he did is, instead of going for so many error terms, previous days, day before yesterday's, like 2 days back, instead of going that, you include only one error term, and instead of you using other error terms, you bring the yesterday's volatility as an independent variable. Okay, yesterday's conditional variance as an independent variable. Okay, that is the meaning. That is how what he suggested. Okay, so what it means is, so if you see here, this is a conditional variance of a variance equation of a Garch model. Conditional variance depends upon yesterday's errors plus the conditional volatility. Okay, the previous day's volatility. So when you bring the previous day's volatility here, what it means, when you estimate this previous day's volatility, at that time you will be including the day before yesterday's error term. Based on day before yesterday's error term only, you will be computing the yesterday's conditional variance, right? So when you include this, obviously you are including the other error terms also, 2 days back, 3 days back, etc. also, it has been included in this itself. Yes, that's why the Garch model is called as parsimonious model. Okay, so Garch 1,1 model is more than sufficient. So let me quickly get into this Garch model. In Garch model, the same. See, you go to E-views. Okay, I am maintaining the same equation. Just I am putting 1 here. Okay, under the Garch term, and I am saying okay. And I am saying okay. When I say okay, what is happening? You see, resid 1 square is an arch term. Garch minus 1 is a Garch term. Both are significant. Here both are significant, right? So that means yesterday's error term is also significantly contributing to today's market volatility. At the same time, yesterday's market volatility is also contributing to today's market. Okay, so if you sum up these two, it is coming closer to 1 actually. Okay, 0.86 plus 0.12, so which is good actually. Okay, which is a good. Okay, so this is how you interpret the Garch model. Okay, so this is the advantage. See, in Garch model actually it is little superior model compared to Arch model. Okay, so this is how you estimate the Garch model. But however, okay, if at all you want to find out, okay, whether the leverage effect is also present or not, then this Garch model is not sufficient. Okay, this Garch model is not sufficient. As a result, what you have to do, you have to go for the next model. What is the next model? Say for example, let me get into T-Garch. Okay, T-Garch model. T-Garch is a threshold model. Okay, so you will be adding one more variable in the right hand side equation, which will capture the leverage effect. Okay, I will explain you the formula of this T-Garch alone, and then I will let us quickly get into the estimation application part. Okay. Okay. Okay, so what the diagram says is, if bad news has more impact than the good news. When something good news comes, the market reacts slowly, it is rising up. Whereas when bad news comes, the market is falling down. Okay, this has been proved literally. Okay, this that around 500 information has been collected by Engel and NG in 1993, and they found that the markets reacts more to the bad news. Okay, this is just to tell you what is the leverage effect. Moving to the formula or equation. So T-Garch conditional equation is like this. Conditional equation depends upon constant plus yesterday's error term. This is an arch term. Okay, and this is an yesterday's conditional variance. Okay, which is nothing but the Garch term. The final one, whatever we have, this is the T-Garch component. Okay, in T-Garch component, what is more important is we need to find whether this lambda is positive or not. If the lambda is positive, that means the market is showing a leverage effect, is having a leverage effect. So let me explain what is this. This is ut minus 1 the whole square, okay, into tt minus 1. Tt minus 1 is nothing but a dummy variable. Okay, so what we are going to do here is, this is yesterday's information, right? Ut minus 1 is a square, is an yesterday's information. So if the yesterday's information is negative, okay, then you assign the value 1 for D, dummy. Okay, so you will be having that residual, right? So in that, actually, whenever you have a positive, okay, you put 0. Whenever you have a negative information, then you have to put 1. Okay, then you have to put 1. So when you put 0 because of positivity, what will happen? If D is 0, D multiplied with all these things will become 0. That means we are not going to cover or we are not going to capture anything. When the market is good, we are not at all bothered. Our area of interest is, or our purpose is, we need to know whether the bad news is creating more volatility or not. Okay, that is what we are trying to do. So if it is a bad news, you assign 1 for the dummy. Okay, so what will happen when you assign 1 and you estimate the model, and in the model, if you find the coefficient, that is a lambda, if it is a positive, then actually, because if it is a positive means what? It is contributing a positive change to the conditional variance. Okay, so that means negative news is contributing more variance to the conditional volatility term, conditional variance term. Okay, if it is negative, then actually bad news is actually reducing the variance. Okay, generally that won't happen. Most probably you will be getting a positive lambda. So when you get to the volatility, whenever the bad news comes, only market will be volatile. Okay, in that case you will get proved that the market is having a leverage impact or not. That is how the leverage effect has been studied here. Okay, so with this I will get into T-GARCH. Okay, so actually this GARCH charts is very simple. Okay, all you have to do is, whenever you want to check, okay, in case of ARCH, I told you, you go for a lot of ARCH models, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, like that, and you have to note down the type information criteria. In case of GARCH, okay, generally, even so many researches are happening, but considering GARCH is a parsimonious model, actually GARCH 1, 1 should be sufficient. Okay, yeah, even though sometimes if you go for GARCH 2, 1 or 1, 2, etc., it may give a better result, but that variation may not be so much. So after estimating a GARCH, now I am going to T-GARCH model. So again, I am clicking estimate here. Okay, I'm not going to do anything here. I'm going to change this threshold order to 1. Okay, that means I am going to include that third component. Okay, by putting 1, what actually I'm doing, I'm including this component. Okay, so when I put 1, the EViews will understand that it needs to assign 1 to all the error terms, previous day's error terms, if at all they are negative. Okay, that is what the EViews will understand. So that's when I put 1, that means I am including these things. Okay, if I put 0, then the entire this part I am ignoring. Or if I leave it blank, or if I put 0, I am ignoring this. If I put 1, then I am including these terms. So with this, just I'm estimating, I'm saying okay. When I say okay, what happens? If you see variance equation, see the resid minus 1 is an ARCH term, and this resid minus 1, the GARCH term, before that GARCH term is also significant. This resid minus 1 square, okay, into resid minus 1. What it means? Resid minus 1, the square is nothing but, I'll just go to the PPT, this one, ut minus 1 square. Okay, that is a resid minus 1 square, and that is multiplied with resid minus 1 if it is less than 0. So that's what that is all about, this component, dt minus 1. So if it is less than 0 only, I am going to assign the value, right? So this part is existing only if it is less than 1. So it will take only the days where the negative information is there, and based on which it is going to estimate whether the leverage effect is present or not. And if you see, yes, the model is this term T-GARCH is significant and the coefficient is positive. So what it means? It means the Nifty is exhibiting the leverage effect. That means Nifty is reacting more to the bad news and less to the good news. Okay, so this is the interpretation of Tegard's model. But however, one of the drawback in the Tegard's model is, see, whenever you have a continuous negative correlation of a Gauss effect, say for example, this alpha 1, alpha 2, all these things, if they are continuously negative, okay, this negativity will leads to negativity in the conditional variance. Okay, but actually if you see what is the conditional variance, variance means what? It is a square root of standard deviation. So variance cannot have a negative, because say for example -4, if you square it, what will happen? It will become a 4 into 4, correct? So you will get 16 positive figure. But sometimes in Tegard's model, what is the problem? This alpha 1, alpha 2, if they are having a continuous negative autocorrelation, this continuous negative autocorrelation sometimes will get spillover, and as a result, what will happen? This conditional variance itself will show as a negative, which is against the logic. Okay, this is one drawback actually Torch model had. Okay, to overcome this drawback, actually we will be going to Tegard's model. Okay, that's the reason actually we will go to Tegard's model. So how this Tegard's model will overcome this particular drawback? Okay, is in Tegard's model we will be considering the log terms. Okay, so what do you mean by log terms? Whenever you can do a logarithmic only for a positive value, you cannot take log on negative things. Okay, remember. So in that way, it will be considering only the logarithmic terms. Okay, this is, say for example, this is a Garch term. Why I am saying this as a Garch term? This is conditional variance. If you see sigma square t minus 1, previous day's conditional variance. Okay, log of previous day's conditional variance. Okay, and if you see lambda, since lambda is there, this is the Tegard's term, because lambda will capture the leverage effect, right? So this is an Tegard's term. Okay, and this is an absolute. See, mod function is applied. Whenever you put a two straight line, we call this as a mod in mathematics. Okay, so what it means? It is going to consider only the absolute value. It is going to consider only the absolute value. As a result, what will happen? This is an arch term actually. The arch term also will have only the positive. Okay, so in that way, the negative spillover won't happen in Tegard's. Okay, in that way, Tegard's model is little superior than the Tegard's model. So let me estimate the Tegard's model here. But the interpretation of Tegard's model is little difficult. Okay, it's not straightforward, because so far, if you see here, all these things have been given, because of which your interpretation becomes easier. But however, when I go to Tegard's, how you will go for Tegard's? You click on estimate. Okay, you click on estimate. You have to change this model type as Tegard's. Okay, model type as Tegard's. Okay, if you want, since we have another variable also, say for example FIA. So far we have not bothered about FIA. Suppose if you want to know, apart from the yesterday's volatility, apart from the new information, apart from leverage effect, you also want to know whether the FIA investment flow into our country is also creating volatility in our market or not. If at all you want to find that, you can include FIA also as one component in the variance regression. Okay, so since we have only one independent variable, just I put one FIA. If you have other variables like exchange rate, all those things also you can put. Okay, so just for your information, just this is an added information. Just I put here and I am saying okay. Yeah. We got the result of Tegard's. Okay, we got the result of Tegard's. So if you see here, this is the formula of Tegard's. Okay, this is the formula of Tegard's. The it is nothing but FIA. C8. Okay, in variance, we will be concentrating on variance equation. C8 is FIA, which is not significant. Okay, so FIA is not significant in bringing volatility to Indian stock market. That is what proven here. Okay, it is not significant. So let us not bother about it. Okay, what we will bother about? We will be bother about all other things. What happens to arch? What is the impact of arch coefficient on conditional volatility, what is the impact of previous day's conditional volatility on today's conditional volatility. And similarly, we will also try to find what is the impact of yesterday's, there is whether there is a leverage impact or not. That also we need to find out. Okay, so in this case, C4 is a constant term. If you see here, the equation says C4 plus. So C4 is not associated with anything. Okay, that means it's a constant term. And C8 is FI8 term because it's straightforward. Okay, all other things, okay, we need to interpret. Okay, we need to interpret. What is C5? C5 says it's an absolute, okay, ABS. So if you go to the formula where we have used this absolute term is nothing but a mod function. Okay, this is nothing but a mod function. So the C5 is nothing but an arch effect. C5 is nothing but an arch effect because it says absolute recede minus 1 divided by square root of Garch. Okay, that's what. See, if you see here, this is an arch effect. Okay, this is an arch effect. C5 is arch. Okay, okay. Now let us come to C6. What is C6? C6 says C6 into recede minus 1 into square root of Garch minus 1. Okay, so what it is? Okay, what it is? Recede minus 1. If you go here, as I told you, T minus 1. Okay, this one into square root of Garch minus 1. Okay, this one. So this is actually what it is. This is actually an E-Garch term. This is actually an E-Garch term because C7, if you see, the log is associated. Log is associated only with the Garch. Okay, Garch term. This is an conditional, yesterday's conditional variance, right? So log of yesterday's conditional variance is a Garch term. So this is C7 is a Garch term, C6 is an E-Garch term, C5 is an arch term. Okay, if you see what is our interest, we need to find arch, Garch, and E-Garch are significant. Yes, they are significant. After that, we need to find an leverage effect. Okay, if you leverage effect, how you will find C6? The C6 actually talks about the leverage effect, but E-Garch model says that it is minus. Okay, so E-Garch model is saying there is no what to say, there is no leverage effect actually, because if this is positive, then we will say there is a leverage effect. Okay, that's why a lot of studies are also there comparing different Arch models with E-Garch models and identifying. So in this case, E-Garch model says there is no leverage effect. This is the interpretation of an E-Garch model. With this, just I want to take one more and then let us get into multivariate also quickly. Because all these models, whatever we are doing, is called as an univariate Garch. The reason is it will try to estimate the volatility. Okay, volatility modeling you can do it, but you cannot do a spillover modeling. Okay, if at all you want to find out the spillover effect, you have to go for multivariate Garch. Okay, before that, what it is, whether the variance. Okay, variance is nothing but the risk, right? Say for example, you are investing in a particular asset. Okay, the return on the particular asset depends upon the mean equation plus the variance. Okay, so whatever the conditional variance you get it in the model, okay, estimation, you will include that conditional variance in the mean equation model. Okay, so the reason is, what do you mean by the conditional variance? The conditional variance talks about the risk. Okay, the conditional variance talks about the risk. This is because it talks about the risk, right? The market is volatile. When the market is volatile, it is talking about the risk. Okay, so when we include this in the return equation, this component talks about whether taking a higher risk will lead to get a higher return or not. Okay, how we will come to know? By including this variance in the mean equation, and if the coefficient is positive, okay, if the coefficient is positive, that means taking a higher risk will add to return. That means the return, it helps to increase the return. Suppose if the coefficient is negative, what it means? By investing in such a risky asset, okay, actually you won't get better return at all. So as an investor, you want to see, just because there is a risk, that doesn't mean there is a potential return, upward higher return. There is, see, whenever there is a risk, there is a possibility of potential higher return. Because why there is a possibility? When we will call this as a risk, risk means its market is getting volatile. Okay, correct or not? When only in volatile market you can able to make a much profit, right? But not always. Okay, so when you get this coefficient positive, that means taking a higher risk will help to get better return for this particular asset. Okay, unfortunately, if this coefficient is negative, even though you take this, even though it is a risky asset, it won't yield a better return. That is the meaning of it. Okay, so let us get quickly into that also. Okay, so I want to include that arch, this variance equation in the mean. Okay, for that, what I want to do, you go and click estimate, you will get this pop-up window. Here arch M is there, right? You have to choose variance. Okay, you have to choose variance. If you choose variance, what it means, this variance is also one of the independent variables. Okay, this variance is also one of the independent. And once if the variance is an independent variable, obviously we will get some coefficient for that independent variable, and we need to see whether the variance is significant and positive or not. That is what we are going to do. Say okay. Okay, so we got it. Okay, now what we have to do? We have to do this. We have to look into mean equation, because we are doing arch M model. That means arch in mean model. Okay, so even though we say it's an arch in mean model, actually we are including only the volatility, Garch term, right? So whether the variance is significant? No, it is not significant. So that means it is not this, for this data set, arch M is not suitable. Because by including variance in the mean is not getting impacted at all. Okay, so that is the meaning of it. Assume that this is a significant. If it is significant, then you have to see the coefficient. If it is positive, then it indicates, okay, yes, the taking a higher risk in this particular share, okay, will always leads to higher return. Okay, that is the kind of an interpretation you have to make on this. So with this, we are coming to the end of univariate model. Okay, univariate Garch models. Okay, let me get into the multivariate Garch model quickly. Okay, multivariate Garch model, which is nothing but M-Garch, popularly called as an M-Garch model, which is nothing but multivariate generalized autoregressive conditional heteroscedasticity. Okay, so I am not going to in depth of all those technicality, but how this M-Garch works. Okay, the formal definition says this: M-Garch allows the conditional on past history covariance matrix, because whenever you get into a multivariate Garch, matrix is important. Having a good knowledge in matrix is important. Okay, if you go by, but however, luckily we have a sophisticated softwares. So even though we don't have a good knowledge on a matrix, because we are only a management students, management scholars or a faculty, right? Mostly, or sometimes an economist. We are not a statistician. So we really don't need to get into so much of working behind the technology. Okay, but however, if you see here, it says it allows the conditional on past history covariance matrix of the dependent variables to follow a structure, okay, flexible dynamic structure. So what actually is trying to, dynamic structure talks about actually a conditional covariance, okay, conditional variance and covariance, basically it talks about it. But to be very frank, let me put it in a very simple and easiest way, and this will be much better for you to understand it. Okay, when you want to go for a multivariate Garch, because that is what all we need. Okay, we really no need. Okay. Okay, so here univariate Garch models are used to model or forecast the volatility of a time series. That's what we saw so far. Okay, but however, multivariate Garch models are used to model, okay, or to forecast the volatility of several time series when there are some linkages between them. Okay, say for example, you want to find out the interdependence, okay, interdependence of the variables. Okay, and simultaneously you want to measure the volatility, and you want to find out whether that volatility in one market is spill over to another market. Because when we talk about interdependence means what? This depends on that, that depends on. So information transmission is happening from both the sides. In univariate model, if you remember, we always kept only Nifty as a dependent variable in our example. Okay, and we always kept FIA as an independent variable. But here in multivariate, I will take multivariate means at least two variables should be there. Okay, at least two variables should be there. Then only we call it as a multivariate. So here we will be bothering about whether the information spillover or a transmission of information is happening between one variable to another variable in both the directions. Okay, assuming there is some kind of an interdependence between them. If that is there, and if the variables are found to be significant, then we will come to a kind of a conclusion. Yes, there is a spillover effect. There is a spillover effect. Okay. So, yeah. For instance, okay, just I'm giving you an example. If at all you want to study the volatility of a stock market, gold market, oil market, and Bitcoin, okay, prices, and they are influencing each other, okay, whether they are influencing each other. In that case, we are actually bothered about whether there is a spillover present in mean and also volatility. Okay, because spillover can happen from returns. That is, when I talk about mean, I am talking about the return. Return spillover is there or not? Volatility spillover is there or not? Both we are interested. Okay, and more importantly, volatility. Okay, both we are interested actually. So, in this, basically, what we'll do, in such a situation, we have to go for multivariate guards. Okay, so only for modeling the volatility and forecasting, you go for univariate. Whenever you want to capture the spillover effect or an interdependent relationship, then you have to move to multivariate guards. Okay. So here, see whether there are, what we will try to do in multivariate, we will try to see whether there are or there are not the connections between them. So whether there are an interdependence or there are no interdependence, that is what we are trying to find. And frankly speaking, how in case of an Arch family model, we just saw 3 or 4 models, right? We saw Arch, GARCH, we saw T-GARCH, we saw E-GARCH and Arch-M model. But actually speaking, there are hundreds of models available. You have GJR, you have so many extensions available, okay? But however, or in other words, likewise, in multivariate GARCH also there are a number of GARCH models available. Okay, but however, the most common and the most popular are these two. Okay, the two important models are the multivariate are, one is a DCC GARCH and other one is BEKK GARCH. Okay, DCC GARCH talks about the dynamic conditional correlation. Okay, dynamic conditional correlation. Okay. That means dynamic means the conditional correlation. That means it's a changing. Okay, DCC GARCH. BEKK GARCH. Okay, actually it is named after the econometricians Engel, because this has been introduced by Engel. Again, as I told you, you cannot overcome or you cannot ignore the word Engel whenever you go for an modeling the volatility or even any given, because he is also there in co-integration. Okay, so whenever you go for a time series analysis, you cannot ignore this particular name, Engel. Okay, and Shepard. Okay, they come out with DCC GARCH model actually in the year 2001. Okay, this is a little dynamic and latest one, and we also have a BEKK match. Okay, actually here BEKK stands for 4 econometricians: Baba, Engel, Kraft, and Kroner. Okay, this has been founded in 1990, but however I doubt, like, because some article says it's 1995. I'm not sure about the year. But here, when you go for a DCC GARCH, actually, this is actually an extension of CCC GARCH. CCC GARCH means it is a constant correlation. Okay, it is a constant. How DCC stands for dynamic conditional correlation. Similarly, CCC stands for constant conditional correlation. Okay, which has been developed earlier by Boltzmann. But since we moved to the advanced model, we are not going to look into CCC GARCH at all. Okay, if you want, you can do practice that also, but nowadays, like, you can just you have so many other GARCH models. So this DCC GARCH is a development over the Boleslav's CCC GARCH. Okay, And actually in DCC Garch, this DCC Garch is easy to work out in RStudio. Okay, it is easy to work out in RStudio software. As I told you, in eViews you have certain constraints. Okay, particularly whenever you go for a multivariate Garch, I strongly recommend you go for RStudio or Microfit, but RStudio is free. Okay, you have also another software called as a RATS, but all these things are paid version. Okay, so better R and RStudio, if you install, that will be more than enough. Okay, to do all these things, because R, if you see, the advantage of R is you can do anything with R, any kind of analysis. It's not only a time series. You can go for a longitude, you can go for a cross-section studies like our primary data study. Anything you can do with RStudio. Okay, that is the advantage. So in eViews, actually, I am using eViews 11. Even in this DCC Garch option is not there. Okay, eViews 11 I am using. The DCC Garch is not there. However, let us use BEKK Garch. Okay, and we will see quickly. We will do it, and we will see the interpretation. And with that, we will wind up for the day. So I am going to eViews. Okay, let us. I'll use the same data set. Okay, the data set is not an issue. I'll use the same data set. To do a dynamic Garch, particularly to do this BEKK Garch model, what you have to do is you have to go to this object. Okay, here. Okay, if you see, there are two objects. Okay, the topmost menu bar. Okay, there you have an object, right? You go there. You have something called as a new object, because here you have to create a system object. Okay, for that you have to create one new object. Okay, so click on this new object. Participants?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to go to object, new object, and then the name of the object. Okay, just I'm changing to say system because it's a system object. So I'm typing say system, and I am saying okay. If I say okay, you saw that there is one eViews work file available. Okay, then system eViews work file is available. In this, I want to write the equation. In this, I want to write the equation. Okay. So what is our equation? We have two variables, right? One is a Nifty, correct? So I will write this Nifty. I'll put everything in smaller. Okay. Nifty depends upon, okay, or Nifty equal to constant. Let me give one constant. Okay, C1 plus C2. C2 is again the parameter. Okay, parameter of what? What is the other independent variable we have? We have an FIA, right? FIA. Say let me assume that yesterday's FIA investment is having an impact on today's stock price, because that is the more practical, right? Because stock market may react, it depends upon yesterday's investment, because today it may happen simultaneously. As a result, yesterday's FIA behavior may have more influence on today's stock price. So what I'm doing, I have written one equation. Okay, one equation where the Nifty is the dependent variable. In case whenever I say Nifty, I mean to say Nifty returns, because I showed you the data is a returns data. Okay, so Nifty returns depends upon constant plus yesterday's FIA behavior. Okay, yesterday's FIA behavior. Okay. Then, as I told you, in multivariate, you have to write the other. It's a system equation. What do you mean by system equation? All the variables are also a dependent variable. Okay, system equation. I want you to recall the VAR framework. Okay, VAR is a system model, right? So here also, what you have to do, the next one, say FIA. It's not visible. Just type say constant. Let me assign constant plus C4 into what is the other variable I have? Say yesterday's Nifty, because today's FII investment may depends upon yesterday's stock price movement. If yesterday market increased, sometimes more institutional investors want to invest today. Okay, so their investment decision on today depends upon yesterday's market. That is what my assumption here. Okay, so what I'm doing Nifty post lag. Okay, these are the two equations. It's a simple equation. So purposefully I kept the variables, everything so simple because I want to complete everything by in 1.5 hours. Okay, so these are the two equations. I hope everyone has typed this equation in your system also, or should I wait or shall I proceed? Okay, I'll be okay. Thank you. So now you have something called as an estimate. Okay, here you click on this estimate. Once you click, okay, you have an estimation method. This you have to change to Arch. Automatically, when you open, it will be available with OLS, ordinary least square, which you have to change it to Arch. Once you change the estimation method as Arch, okay, as I told you, there are so many multivariate Arch models are available. Okay, so what type of model we want to do? Okay, so 3 models available. One is a diagonal Beck. Okay, the other one is a constant conditional correlation, that is a CCC developed by Boleslave in 1990. Okay, we are not going to do that also. Third one is a diagonal BEKK. Okay, it's a matrix, so obviously the diagonal impact will be here. Okay, so change this to diagonal BEKK. Change this to diagonal BEKK and come here. Error distribution, I suggest for multivariate cards, you better go for student distribution. For univariate, I told either you can go for student distribution or keep it as such. That is whatever is available. Okay, the normal distribution. Okay, that itself you can have it. But for multivariate, please change it to students T distribution and restrictions. If you see the coefficients, Arch coefficient, GARCH, because we have put 1, 1, right? Arch 1, GARCH 1, all those things. Okay, because once you put, it will appear here. Okay, constant Arch 1. Restriction, because we have to imply certain restriction. Our restriction depends upon diagonality, because we are working on diagonal BEKK, so you have to choose diagonal here. Okay, you have to choose diagonal here and then say OK. It will take some time, maybe some 20 seconds. If you see down, see iterations are happening here. Okay, that means it is in process. Iterations are happening here. It will try to find out the optimum iteration. Okay, number of iterations. 44, 46 done, but still not able to find out the conclusive thing.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, madam.
Yeah,
Yes, madam.
sir, I did on eView 12, and here in this, I got it in 54 iterations. So does it matters because of the software, the version?
Usually that shouldn't happen. Here it says 57 iterations. Okay, so your results won't vary much.
In mine,
madam.
it is written.
Yeah. See, always whenever you go for advanced model, a lot of advancements will be there. Okay, results may be more accurate, all those things may be there. So it doesn't matter. Okay, as far as you get a 54, then you have to just to project your model in the paper and you have to interpret it. That's all. The convergence happens here after 57 iteration. In your case, it's a 54. Okay. So here we got this. Okay, this is a system model, as I told you. This is an outcome. Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay, so here the first 4, these are the mean equations kind of, because if you see for what is the C1 constant, C2 we kept it as a FIA, yesterday's FIA. Okay, and C3 is a constant, and C4 is an FIA is Nifty. Sorry, Nifty is yesterday information. So if you see here, this Nifty's yesterday's information is significant, but FIA's yesterday's information is not significant. As far as that means, the return spillover. This talks about the return spillover. Okay, so when Nifty is a dependent variable and FIA is an independent variable, the Nifty return spillover from FIA to Nifty is not happening. Okay, so that means based on FIA, Nifty is not reacting. The Nifty return doesn't depends upon the FIA's yesterday's price. Okay, that is the meaning of it. But however, when you C4 is all about FIA is an dependent variable and Nifty's yesterday's data is an independent variable. Okay, so yesterday's Nifty returns plays a significant impact. The impact is positive. If you see the coefficient is positive, plays a significant positive impact on FIA investment. Okay, this is the return equation basically. Okay, come down to variance. Okay, you got some variance. Okay, C5 to C10, 6 items are there here. But before that, see, if you see all are significant, that means it is an indication volatility spillover is there in both sides. Okay, that means FIA also will contribute to Nifty's volatility. Nifty also contributes to FIA's volatility. That is the meaning of it. But I want you to concentrate here. Come down. So yeah, because diagonal BEG. See, this is the covariance specification of our model. Diagonal BEG. What it says? GARCH is equal to M plus A1 into resid. Okay. Into resid minus 1 into A1. See, actually you have a long equation for this actually. So you have different terms like say HT is equal to dt into qt into dt, and each dt means what, qt means what, everything is there. Basically HT is all about the estimator of a conditional correlation. Okay, HT is an estimation of a conditional correlation basically. The formula for that will be HT is equal to dt into RT into dt. So TT generally refers to conditional standard deviation, which depends upon the n into n diagonal matrix. Okay, based on that we are going to experiment. So that D, actually whatever I have put now, the D in the matrix actually refers to, it is a variance which has been extracted from the univariate model. Okay, even though we run a multivariate model, the variance which we are using to compute for the multivariate model has been derived from the univariate model. So there are a lot of theory behind it. Just I am showing you the result. Okay, so if you see here, all these things are significant. Okay, A1, B1. See, A1, the coefficients are significant in the GARCH model. Okay, all are in the diagonal matrix. So the simple, if you go here also, the variance, both this to this, that is FIA to Nifty, Nifty to FIA, both all are significant. So there is a volatility spillover, bidirectional volatility spillover from FIA to Nifty, Nifty to FIA. But however, the return spillover, if you see, return spillover is there from Nifty to FIA, but not the reverse. FIA to Nifty, there is no return spillover. Okay, so this is the simple interpretation of the BEKK model. But to be very frank, what I will suggest you is, I will suggest you 2 articles. Okay, I will mail this article to you. One article will give you a complete understanding on DCC. Another complete understanding on BEKK. My suggestion is, whenever you go for a multivariate GARCH modeling, you please try to go for a RStudio. That will be better. That is my suggestion. This may vary, the views may vary others, because I found that is RStudio will be much more effective and it has more options also. Okay, so this is all about. So today what we have done is, we have done only one multivariate GARCH model, and we have gone through the basics of GARCH models, all those things. Okay, so with this I will wind up for the day. I think I have given some kind of an input about multivariate GARCH and an extensive input about the univariate GARCH. Okay, so thank you all. That's all from my side. Over to the organizers.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So, participants, if you have a few questions, you can ask.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can able to hear you, sir.
Sir, good afternoon. It's a nice class. Just a question of sometimes out of my session. You have talked about on heteroscedasticity. Okay.
Okay.
So suppose in a cross-sectional data we have some issue on heteroscedasticity. So nowadays, what the people are doing, they are using robust standard error, and they're saying that heteroscedasticity is removed by using robust standard error. So
correct.
I think that will be the right way to deal with it. No?
Yes, sir. Actually, we call that as a whitening process. The error needs to be whitened. For that, the robust method will be followed. Yeah, correct. That is the way actually you have to deal with the heteroscedasticity.
Scedasticity, because thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
This process of removing a heteroscedasticity is generally called as a whitening process. Thank you.
Participants, any other questions? Sir, if questions are only that much from the participant side, let me take the opportunity to thank you formally, sir.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Participants, any other questions? Okay, sir. So I hope.
Ma'am, excuse me, ma'am. I have a question to sir. So my name is Vasis Mohan. I'm from Raipur. So what I want to know is, let's say I want to test MGARS. So do I have to follow all the procedures, like first of all there will be TGARS or EGARS, then only I can go to MGARS, or directly I can go to the MGARS?
So the general way is first you try to estimate the volatility, sir. That is my personal thing. Okay. So for estimating volatility, it's better to go for an univariate model. Okay, that may be one part of your research, because you directly don't go for, generally people won't directly go for studying the spillover. Before studying the spillover, they will first try to model the volatility. So you try to model the volatility using a univariate model. After modeling, you can go for a next step, that is an advanced step, to a multivariate, where you want to try to find out the spillover effect, because of you suspect there is an interconnectivity between these markets. So because of which you want to go for it. So that will be an ideal way to proceed.
Right, sir. Sir, one more question can I ask?
Okay.
Sir, in the mean equation, we are finding out whether there is an impact of both the variables on on each other. So what is the difference between doing it and going to the co-integration? I
didn't get you, sir. I didn't get your question.
What I am saying in co-integration also, like let's say it's Johnson co-integration. So we are finding out what are the impacts, right, sir?
Yeah, you see, co-integration is based upon